This episode is brought to you by our friends at Octopus Energy.
Some people in the entertainment industry are successful, but a much, much smaller number are genuinely admired.
I was trying to think in TV who everyone likes. I mean, Attenborough.
In movies, Julia, Meryl, these you will not hear a bad word said about any of those people. There are actually very few that no one is rude about behind their back, but those two are certainly two of them.
Can I tell you about a company that no one is rude about behind their back and that people admire? Would it shock you to learn it is our friends at Octopus Energy? Octopus Energy has ended up being named Britain's most admired company 2025.
That's nice.
That's really nice, isn't it?
I'm sure companies are like Hollywood, just absolutely vicious behind each other's backs. But to actually be elected most admired,
all
is
the
pretty
other
good.
companies, like there's, all the other companies just sitting around going, "Shall I tell you who I met the other day? Octopus Energy." Actually, you know what? Lovely bunch. Really, really lovely bunch. All of them. The most admired company in the UK 2025, which is why we're very, very happy that they are our sponsors.
Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hello, everybody. Hello, Marina.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm very well. I just had a lovely weekend in my hometown of Brighton, going to see my brother's band, and that was really, really lovely.
Oh, that's fun.
Playing at the Brighton Centre.
I was going to say.
Which is where I saw my first ever gig, which was Toyah Wilcox, back in, I want to say 1981, something like that. And my second ever gig, which was Jasper Carrott, which even to this day, one of the greatest things I've ever been to.
I saw him right back in the day, and it was extraordinary.
Just one of the funniest evenings of my entire life. Suede were less funny, but very, very, very
good at what they did.
Very, very good at what they did. Exactly. Listen, they don't compete. Jasper does what he does, Suede do what they do.
And in many ways, part of their success has been based on that, just being allowed to be on twin tracks.
Do you know what? It's fascinating when you see Suede and Jasper Carrott in a room together, because you think that they would clash, and actually they don't, because they both got their own orbs, How about you?
I am very well. I have been away, but now I'm back, and I'm very excited for our subject today.
Yes, we got the first thing we're talking about. Some people would have heard of this gentleman, others won't. Others will wish they never did when we talked about him, but his name is Clavicular.
Clavicular.
Listen.
Clav for short.
Yeah. You are going to have quite enough Clavicular by the time we are done, I promise you. He's quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Although also is he. So
yes,
we'll be
exactly.
covering.
And talking of extraordinary, but is he? And, occasionally someone comes along, you think they're going to end up being a friend of this podcast. Logan Paul, friend of the podcast, sold his Pokemon card for $16 million. We'll talk about that. But sold it to Anthony Scaramucci's son, AJ. We're going to be talking about that. I feel like it won't be the last time we talk about AJ Scaramucci.
It's a sub-lebrity special.
It really is, isn't it?
Let's get into it.
Yeah, Clavicular.
Okay. I am not aware of a well-known public figure called Clavicular. Not my words, Richard, but the words of hugely popular AI platform ChatGPT when I asked it to retrieve a specific quote this individual had made besmirching the physical appearance of US Vice President J.D. Vance, who ChatGPT is aware of. But so who is Clavicular? You may have seen a lot suddenly about this person. If you're sort of more extremely online, you might have seen him sort of particularly surfacing towards the end of last year. And like many people, your question, like often happens these days, your question will be, do I actually have to find out who this person is?
By the way,
if so, why?
In the next 10, 15 minutes, you will learn all you're ever going to need to know about him. You can then, if you wish to,
I hope,
stick him in a drawer and forget about him forever. So, Clavicular, to catch you up, here is your basic thumbnail sketch of this guy. He is an influencer. He live streams. In real life, he goes out in the real world, goes on dates and stuff like that. But his shtick is he is a Looksmaxxer. And this is a whole community of people that only real job is to make themselves as handsome as possible, whether that's with the use of cosmetics or whether with the use of medical procedures. But Looksmaxxing is the community. This guy, Braden Peters, who is Clavicular, is the absolute king of this. And in the last couple of weeks, there have been profiles of him in so many major newspapers. Is having one of those things, like a moment where this idea of Looksmaxxing and this idea of this guy, Clavicular, have gone absolutely mainstream. So we just wanted to talk you through who he is, why it's gone mainstream now. Is it dangerous? What happens next? And what is this weird new world where celebrities come from completely different places?
Also, is he already over?
Is he already over?
Looksmaxxing is the key. I mean, like all things that call themselves life philosophies nowadays, they don't actually, and they're not worthy of the tag philosophy. But essentially, what his view is and what the view of the kind of by the way, allying yourself to a hashtag is very, very clever, because if he will, your content will always be surface, which is part of the reason why he's become big. It's essentially the philosophy, or his particular take on it as a philosophy, is women no longer depend on men for money or lots of things that they used to depend them on, even status. Consequently, there is a smaller pool of men who will ever sort of have meaningful relations with women. And the only thing that really makes sense, here's the leap, is extreme physical optimization in this kind of crapsack world that you have to live in. And that you'll hear some words that come from the sort of pickup artist community, some words from the sort of incel community. Unless you're born a sort of, like Brad Pitt, a complete Chad, like a sort of kind of platonic ideal of a kind of great looking guy, then you must work to make yourself good looking enough for women to be interested in you.
As it were, max your looks.
You must max your looks.
What I call looksmaxxing.
Yeah, well, everything is maxing now. And there's all sorts of, as I say, there is this whole arcane vocabulary. Like everything, it has to have a label put on it nowadays very, very quickly. And so it seems like in my view, it seems like it's much less evanescent than it actually is. So there are whole separate, there's...
Can I describe to people at home what Braden Peters looks like? This is how I would describe him. He's 6'2", he weighs 180 pounds, he has a 31-inch waist. His biacromial width, and that is basically the span of the clavicle, who knew that was important, it is 19.5 inches, which is pretty much perfect if you want to be classically handsome. He has a mid-face ratio, which is derived by dividing the distance from the pupil to the mouth by the distance between the pupils, of 1.07. Don't need to tell you that's good. And his chin to philtrum ratio, your philtrum is the bit above your lip. Can you guess his chin to philtrum ratio?
Surprised me.
2.6. So that's a handsome dude.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of bullshit maths, kind of eugenics adjacent nonsense.
Oh, it's
to
eugenics
all of this.
adjacent to this, for sure.
So looksmaxxing is this form of self-optimization, but often in his hands, in really quite extreme forms. He says he kind of constantly creates minor microfractures by hammering his cheekbones so that they become more pronounced. There's this whole peptides injection culture, and people are buying this black market, off-market peptides and trying to kind of optimize themselves that way. Obviously there's masses and masses of working out, but there's the huge fake maths of it all. These, as you said, the measuring of all the face and the this and that, and the idea that there are all these perfect ratios. It's almost like the whole point is, I suppose, people saying I've been shut out of these things. There must be a mathematical answer to it. There must be the maths algorithm of me not getting laid.
Yeah. Yes.
Algorithmically, can you get me laid, please?
Yeah.
Because this is all it really is. And but this is actually, as I said before, women have this is making money off the male gaze. Men making money off the male gaze. Women have made money off the female gaze for a long time. Or they haven't made money, but they've been used to make money. People saying, if you're ill, let me sell you the cure.
Yeah, and it's the listen. We probably don't need to say this, but in case there's anyone listening who needs to hear it, it will not make you happy. This is not the route to happiness in any way whatsoever. If you think it's funny, that is great. Watch it. If it makes you feel bad about yourself, absolute guarantee this is not the way to make you happy. The way to make you happy is to, be interested in the world, be interested in human beings.
But ask women about it, because they've been doing about it for literally thousands of years, and they're still doing it. Yeah. So saying it won't make you happy is meaningless. Unfortunately, that's sadly not that's not the way we can deal with this, because women have been doing it for thousands of years, and they're still buying into their own unhappiness.
Let me speak to women as well. Yeah. Women, I think they know.
And of course, he has a sort of online university, like lots of people in the sort of manosphere, where you can learn all these things. He's sort of evolved to the sort of, self-care status of a kind of 18th century Japanese geisha. It's like, this is a grim way to live. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this.
Okay, go on.
Which I know you love to hear.
Uh-oh.
He honestly reminds me of one of those incredibly homophobic Republican senators of yesteryear who were eventually always picked up for soliciting in a men's bathroom.
Oh,
yeah. Really. I mean, I hope he ends up living a more happy and evolved life. Let's put it that way.
The online right is so deeply homoerotic.
Oh, it's beyond.
It's like extra, but to the extent they must know.
Do they not notice?
They must do. They must do. It's the single most homoerotic
but I
sphere.
don't think they've noticed
even more so than ice hockey.
Yeah, and they don't even know. When someone like Nick Fuentes, who is going to be, he was a kind of awful, horrific, sort of really far right edgelord, one of these guys.
Yeah.
When they're talking all the time about sort of hating women and the way they hate women, it sort of feels like, guys, you should just get together. Yeah. Why not be with a perfect person, a man, and not with women who you clearly despise? But anyway, to get back onto it, the whole sort of physical self-optimization thing, he believes, or does he believe, that you can sort of ascend, as in the terminology of their thing. Yeah, it's like a sort of physical form of rapture where you eventually, if you work really hard on smashing your cheeks with hammers and stuff, you can eventually get more slays. This is the slang for having sex with women,
slays.
Conquering women.
Do you know what? The only slay I'm interested in is Santa's.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I agree. He's misspelt it completely, of course. And as I say, that he does, there's extreme medical stuff. The peptides thing is odd. He says he's been on steroids since he's 14, which you can believe all of this, though, because these are people who've grown up in a Silk Road era and you could get anything you liked online, and you clearly can now, because the whole peptides thing, which he's a really big pusher of, is a huge kind of unregulated or off books or illegal thing that has been flooding into people can get hold of this stuff, and he pushes the idea of taking it.
Well, he started I think like 14, 15 where he was buying testosterone on the internet because he said, well, why, it's like a cheat code to whatever it is he needs to be, which by the way is not what anybody needs to be, but maybe listen, he's filling a hole, like that's what he needed, and his parents found it and they said, no, you can't do this, and then so he started getting it without them knowing, and so that's where he began this journey. And as you say, that it sort of has its origins in 4chan and the incel community and all of those things. And so firstly, he's trying to make himself look as handsome as possible in a very, very mainstream white version of what attractive might be. And then he starts being a sort of advocate for it. And as you say, live streaming, streams for 8 hours a day. But, he's making $100,000 a week.
He must be in the gym for 8 hours a day as well, because you can't... Anyway, there are elements of tragedy in it.
Elements?
Well, I mean, a lot of elements. Yeah, but equally, when you're sort of unpleasant, it's slightly, you're an easy villain. But it's a sort of Darwinian struggle to get laid. He says things like he puts boxes around his house so that when one of his slays comes home with him, he can sometimes stand on the box just at opportune moments so he looks taller. I mean, you have to laugh at this. But then there are sort of elements of comedy, which I quite enjoy. He says he's completely uninterested in politics.
Yes.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
The reason that quote that I was at the top of this item when I was saying I was looking for a quote, what was the thing he said about Vance? He said that in the sort of 2028 face-off in the US presidential election, a notional one between California Governor Gavin Newsom and JD Vance, he would obviously go for Newsom because he said Newsom was a 6'3" mogger. We're going to get to mogging. And Vance was subhuman, obese, and has a recessed side profile.
They said, you know what?
He hasn't said anything about Trump, but he should, because there's a lot to say there. God. There's so much to say there.
But they did.
Go on, say something about it, you pussy. So mogging, we must talk about mogging. Mogging just means you've bested someone physically in a sort of side-to-side contest. So, and
by the way, you mean by being more handsome than
by being more handsome, or being more ripped than, or being whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he will on his live stream stand next to somebody who is unaware that he's standing next to them to make that person look unattractive and him look attractive. That's the idea of mogging.
Yeah.
So
or just unintentional moments.
Yeah.
And let's get to that.
Who would have thought the word mog could have got worse than it's been a few years ago?
I know. Jacob, the good one.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but also, I suppose one of the reasons why we're talking about him today, because apart from you've seen him in lots of places, but is he also already over? because something happened.
When you say, by the way, you see him in lots of places, I think this is the thing for lots of people who listen to this thing is it's if you are very online, he is everywhere. If you're not particularly online, he is nowhere at all.
No, I don't think that's right. I think he has been mainstreamed in the last fortnight.
Exactly. I had not heard about him until this week, but because he has become so massive and he's on every single everyone else's live stream, and you know the thing with these influencers is they multiply themselves by going on each other's streams and going on each other's feeds.
It's a huge amount of how you get clout
bigger and bigger
by
and bigger.
collaborating.
And his shtick, which is what it is an interesting one, and it's writable about, and he absolutely commits to the bit. You know, he's not going to go, yeah, I think maybe it'd be interesting if about masculinity and maybe we should be more handsome. He absolutely 100% commits. So he is the perfect shape and form of a phenomenon. He's the perfect shape and form of someone where everyone at the same time goes, oh, what's this new thing? And who's this new weird guy doing it? So he's got massive. And as you say, the big newspapers, legacy media have started writing and talking about him in the last 2 weeks, which I assume means it's already over, but you will.
Yeah, we can talk. Okay. We can talk about the online moment that suggests that something, because always it's such a sort of tightrope. If you're so extreme and you're so judgmental, you run such a risk of if one small embarrassing thing happens to you. Now, he was doing a live stream at Arizona State University, and he was obviously doing what he always does, which is go to the gym and talk to all the frat boys. Anyway, and there was a frat house leader who happened to be standing next to him, and the frat house leader just had a better the physical look than him. So everyone's like, oh my God, like all the extremely online people are like, I can't believe I remember where I was when, Clavicular got frame-mogged.
Got what mogged?
Frame-mogged. The physical shape. This guy was standing next to him in a sort of vest.
He was frame-mogged.
Yeah, he was frame-mogged.
Sorry, you look at me like I'm an idiot for not understanding the expression frame-mogged.
I was hoping you've come here prepared.
It was like I was your grandfather. I was going, frame-mogged. Yeah, frame-mogged.
He was frame-mogged, something that nobody said, like, honestly, 2 weeks ago. But among the extremely online community, this moment already has attained the status of like historical event. This is like, try and imagine on ironic Pearl Harbor, okay, where everyone is just doing jokes and it's a meme and it's like a complete.
Yeah.
But of course, then it just disappears.
A lot of popular culture is an ironic Pearl Harbor. Yeah. These days.
Yeah. That you forget about really quickly.
But then becomes incredibly. Then has incredibly unironic consequences.
Yes, sadly, the irony eventually melts away. So, because I suppose one of the things that people are saying is, who is funding him? We have seen, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, the way that lots of kind of extremely hard right women pundits and commentators suddenly started stopping talking about kind of deliberately obvious kind of Route One politics stuff and started talking about things like Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, because it pipelines people into those kind of opinions.
Wife stuff that is going, this isn't politics. There's no politics here.
I agree. And so now when you see him hooking up online with sort of Nick Fuentes, one of the things we have to sort of accept, which is so odd, is that sort of Charlie Kirk version of young conservatism is now really mainstream. Yeah. And there is a whole separate class of we're living in a kind of edgelord ascendancy where these people that used to be kind of part of that have now gone really quite far out on limbs. So there are people like Candace Owens, who was, one of those kind of, I don't know, Trump outriders. She's black, she's young, she's beautiful, she did a whole lot White Lives Matter thing, those sort of things. She now is suggesting that Erica Kirk is involved in her husband's death. So all of these people who used to be kind of mainstream young conservatism, which, by the way, obviously that Overton window had shifted pretty right anyway, are now in this kind of uncontrollable space beyond them all. And there are people like Nick Fuentes, there are people like Candace Owens. It's not clear whether Clavicular, who is, by the way, still only 19, can get sort of sucked into that ecosystem and be used as a way of kind of pipelining young men to something much more extreme than a form of kind of mutually agreed upon, quite hard right, I don't know, I'm an avatar for our horrible times.
Yeah, it's a question of where you go next if you get your fame in that way. Because, the way we traditionally understand fame is you're an actor, you do a few small jobs, and then you book bigger jobs, and then, you go to Hollywood, and that's how you become super famous. You're a stand-up.
That's what a celebrity is.
Yeah, you're stand-up, you do open slots, then you start doing club shows, and then someone books you on a TV show, and then suddenly you're a team captain on something, and then
you're an artist.
You've got your own show. That's the thing you do.
But you come from the creative industries and creative artistry. That's sort of you're in sport.
He cannot continue with this shtick and keep making money out of it for too much longer because it has a shelf life. You can see it has a shelf life. Whereas simply being a personality doesn't. But to do that, he has to go into other areas, other lifestyle areas. And as you say, at the moment, in the sphere he is straying into, the way to do that is via a sort of far right politics. So you see why people are drawn into it. But it's a ratchet
with all of these things. Much as Candace Owens,
exactly.
She starts off one thing, then she's got this whole thing
you have to keep going
Brigitte
further and
Macron's
further
a
and
man,
further.
and they're suing her over it. Where would you go possibly next? You're going to say that Charlie Kirk's widow is involved in his shooting? It's extraordinary.
It's an addiction to numbers.
Yeah.
And so there is only one way to go, and that's further and further and further. But, all political movements kill themselves by doing this. That's the point. On left or on right, having to go further and further and further to prove yourself more pure than everyone else.
But political figures might even kill themselves. That's part of what's so awful about his thing is that, I mean, he is still only 19, and I, know it doesn't excuse any of this stuff because he says terrible things. But one thing that I do think sets him apart is that he's like, oh, I live in a horror story. My life, this is awful. Like, I'm a sort of avatar for our nihilist times. I am a kind of tragic figure. I don't want to be like this, which is different to something that, like, as I said, I think it must have been in our bonus episodes about the books when I mentioned we were talking about The Game, the Neil Strauss book. But Andrew Tate, the funniest thing in the world is him saying, I haven't read a book, I'm amazing, I've got like a car that cost £1 billion. I mean, he's such a baby, it's beyond. But his thing is, I am constantly winning. I am everything maxing all the time, and I'm loving it. Whereas this is like really quite tragic. My life is a horror story. I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to inject myself. I shouldn't have to have made myself infertile. I mean, it's either you become involved in conspiracy culture.
Yeah.
Or you're like some rock star who dies by 27. Yeah. Sorry to say, because you've abused your body in such a sort of difficult way. Let's talk a bit about the reason that you've seen suddenly so many profiles, and I'm not going to count all the places I've seen. Yeah. I've seen a big thing in GQ, the New York Times, the Guardian did something. We live in a really turbocharged trend cycle anyway, so things that there are only sort of 3 examples of are immediately like, okay, this must be the key to Generation Alpha or whatever it is. I do think that legacy media now, when I see things like that, and I know we're doing a thing on it on the podcast, but I am trying to talk about it in a slightly broader sense, that legacy media now is so terrified of missing things that might be big. There's a sense that and what that says to me is there's a sense that there is a world happening out there that they're not in anymore, and that they certainly, without any question, and they've known this for a long time, no longer control, no longer serve as any form of gatekeeper to. And they do this kind of cargo cult thing where they think, we must have a profile of this person because lots of people are talking about him. Because if not, then who would we be if we didn't mention this?
You make your money in that culture by super serving a particular fandom and by having a group of people who can become obsessional with you. And that's why you live stream for 8 hours a day. You're always on, you're making money all the time from a small group of people. There is a world in which you then get profiled in the New York Times and spoken about in other places where you can ascend, to use Braden Peters' own words. You can ascend in monetary ways that you can continue serving your community, but you can continue super serving your fandom, but that you can also then access that sweet sponsorship money. I literally never read a single thing when I'm thinking about this podcast about anyone, any influencer, any actor who doesn't have a deal with Gucci, for example. They all do. They're all brand ambassadors. But to do that, you do have to sort of slightly be written about in other places. So he's just ascending. That's all he's doing. We're helping him ascend.
But is he actually already descending because of the ironist moment?
Yeah.
You know, it's if you live by a form of dark irony, you can die by it really quickly.
Well, you know, like Rona Martin, right?
Yes.
The curler.
Yeah.
I mean, she was massive when the women won the curling gold, and everyone went like Rona Martin crazy. Rona Martin, right, still curls. Right, she's got a lovely family, you know, she's got a job, she enjoys herself, she has a life that she can go back to, she can enjoy that brief moment of fame. If you're Braden Peters, you have to somehow keep that going, and that's the tragedy there. If you don't have any actual skill, you're in trouble. If you do have a skill, you'll be fine. Look at someone like Rylan. So Rylan, I always think, is a very early kind of almost an analog example of this sort of thing. That he appears on X Factor. It's not the first show he'd appeared on, and you go, "Oh, I know who this is. Oh my God, this is someone who's desperate for attention." But Rylan had a skill, which is people.
Yeah, he's talented.
People really liked him, and he was really good at presenting, and so he managed to get a foothold in something else and find himself an actual real job. And that may well be what Clavicular does. Clavicular, it might turn out in, you know, meetings with various people, has an interesting worldview, or is interested in animals, and, you know, can do travel documentaries. Maybe he can, you know. So you can this entry to the market is the first thing. You can do three things. Either you have a skill, you can become part of our culture, you can disappear, or you can not have a skill. You think, oh, okay, I'm going to get myself into the manosphere or into the political sphere and try and monetize that. Those are your three options. It'll be interesting to see where Clavicular goes.
A Pokemon card has been sold for over $16 million. Pokemon obviously are trading cards based on the whole sort of Pokemon world. Pikachu Illustrator is the specific nature of this card. It was made for some sort of promotional competition in 1998.
It was made for an illustration competition, funnily enough. There was like a drawing competition, and the prize was one of these, I think it's 41 cards, which were designed by Atsuko Nishida, who was the guy who designed Pikachu in the first place. So probably the rarest of all these Pokemon trading cards.
Yeah, it was owned by... there's obviously a celebrity element to all of this. It was owned by Logan Paul. This is like me talking about the Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor diamond that the other week that Margot Robbie wore on the promotional red carpet. Logan Paul wore this round his neck to WrestleMania in 2022
in a bejeweled case on a diamond necklace.
Okay. As discussed, that Burton diamond, that massive Burton sort of heart diamond, went for $8.8 million about 15 years ago. Now I would imagine it would fetch about the same as Pikachu.
Yeah.
It was bought by one of Anthony Scaramucci, our goal hanger colleagues' sons, AJ.
Yeah.
They're trying to create some sort of global treasure hunt. They say they want to buy the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, good luck.
A copy of it. Talk to me about this auction house that this is the thing. Collectibles, it was facilitated, wasn't this, by this guy called Ken Golden, who's got that Netflix show called King of Collectibles. And he's got a show about, I've only seen it once, but it's kind of interesting. It's about memorabilia.
Yeah, it's about this world of memorabilia, and trading cards are a huge part of that. Comics, of course, are a huge part of that, and these things can go up into their millions. And it might seem absurd, but we paid for old masters. You can pay insane amounts of money for paintings, anything that has rarity and anything that people want. And Ken Golden worked out very early on, as various other people did, the generation who grew up with Pokemon, the generation who grew up with trading cards, had reached the ages of 35, 40, 45, and had a huge amount of money. Nostalgia for their childhood was a huge deal. And so suddenly this market went absolutely stratospheric. Pokemon cards and Magic the Gathering cards, which is another trading game, are the perfect things for auction houses because you know exactly how many there are of each one. There are a small amount of some of them, in the same way when you used to collect Panini football stickers, and if you got a glossy badge, you'd be so excited. Also, the verification industry. So there's a company called PSA, which is the Professional Sports Authenticators, whose job is to authenticate cards, but also give them a score out of 10 as to the quality of them. And this one, the reason this is 16 million, one of the reasons it's 16 million is it's the first one of these Pikachu Illustrator cards ever to come on the market with a score of 10, which PSA would call Gem Mint. So it's Gem Mint.
It's not dog-eared in the parlance of anyone normal.
Exactly that. The second most expensive Pokemon card, so this is 16.5 million, which is a little bit toppy, but the world of auctions can be strange sometimes. But previously, the record for a Pokemon card was just over 5 million. And that was exactly the same Pokemon card. That's the one that's when Logan Paul bought this. He bought it for 5 million. He's made 11 million profit. As you say, that he knows how to make something more valuable. But
he doesn't make my culture more valuable. He knows how to devalue it completely, but carry on.
In the same way as kind of, people buy rare whiskey and people buy gold and all these things, I think this feels like a perfectly acceptable thing to have in our culture. I think it's quite nice if you're going to have an asset class, and we've got lots of these asset classes, sculpture, painting, all of that sort of stuff. I quite like that it's this thing. My son loves Pokemon, and he's in his 20s, but it's such an important part of his childhood, and it's an incredibly important part of other people's. I quite like that this is the thing that because this is not, people are not buying this to put on their wall. They're buying it as an investment. It's something that you want to own. You invest in it, and I quite like that this is an investment class. Like these incredible illustrators doing these crazy things.
Okay, fine. They're buying shares in this and not like Union Carbide or something.
Exactly.
But it's a low bar. We were also living through a time where, which by the way went nuts, and all of this stuff went nuts in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Remember, it went nuts at a time where people were driven nuts by what they were forced to do, i.e. stay inside. Think about NFTs. You basically convinced a load of people to pay for JPEGs. Okay, I'm really sorry to
NFTs
put it down.
NFTs were funny.
Okay, they were funny, but a lot of people put their money. Yeah, but people put their money in it.
Yeah,
people
but not many people.
All these supposedly high value collectibles.
Are you saying that you did?
Don't be stupid. Of course I didn't.
You lost £7.8 million.
I'm saving for my, Van Gogh. But
I wonder, by the way. Listen, we can ask him, I guess. I wonder if Scaramucci bought an NFT.
One of the things we slightly think about is that, again, to speak of the nihilism of the culture, it's all bullshit. It's all what anyone will pay for it. That's what markets are. There is a sort of element, but they also it's a generation that also rent everything, or effectively they stream their, they don't own physical copies of lots of things, although, as we've seen, there is a sort of trend back towards that. I'm sure Anthony Scaramucci Sr. would say that his boys have, how to put this, not been starved of physical ownership of material things. So perhaps they are not, but they certainly understand maybe something in the culture. So talking about the other things they want to buy to buy a copy of the Declaration of Independence.
So this is it. So AJ Scaramucci's bought this, said this is just the start of me owning the
something called a global treasure hunt.
Yeah.
And then they also want to buy a T-Rex fossil. Now, this is something quite interesting. Can we do a sidebar on dinos, buying dinos? As I think I mentioned on this podcast before, Nicolas Cage once outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for a T-Rex skull. But that was like 20 years ago. Nicolas Cage, as you know, has interesting spending habits, all of which were unsustainable at the time. But anyway, he had to give that one back to Mongolia.
You had to give it back to Mongolia?
Yeah, because it was stolen. Well, I mean, you can fray anything.
But who'd you send it to?
The Mongolian government. They've got a retrieval sort of thing, because Mongolia is not a place you can take a dinosaur skeleton from. By the way, interesting, the US
I wish you told me that last week.
Yeah.
Wow.
The US is one of the only places in the world where if you dig one up, it's yours. People are now trying to go back and find where they were, because often they're even unassembled and they're in some tiny private local museum's vault, to go back and buy them, because there is a growing demand on the market, the art market, essentially, for what they call natural objects, which are primarily dinosaur bones, but also things like meteorites and stuff like that. Now, Sotheby's are selling more and more of them. A few months ago, they sold a Ceratosaurus skeleton. It was 150 million years old. I think they estimated it for $4 million. It went for $30 million. The year before, a Stegosaurus had gone for $44 million. They have something that is kind of popularly known as Geek Week, where where they're selling things like an original Apple I computer. Again, as I say, kind of meteorites, dinosaur bones.
Yeah, I've talked before about Julian's auctions in LA.
Yeah.
Julian with an E, which was what we talked about it when they were selling all the props from Frasier. And yeah, if you look on their thing this week, they've like loads of astronaut stuff, loads of civil rights stuff, living history.
Yes.
Yeah.
That people want to physically own a piece of. It's interesting as well that there is a strong criminal element to this, because there was a really interesting few weeks, I think at the very end of last year, sort of the first case was on December the 29th and the last one was halfway through January. Just in Nottinghamshire, there were like 4 major criminal cases that involved Pokemon cards. Because they're a really liquid asset, they're very small and portable, and
really easy to fake.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting that it's become.
You have to be very, very careful with collectibles. It's I was looking up. So I was thinking, what have I got? So I was looking up Panini football stickers, and literally the most expensive at auction Panini football sticker was someone had a completed World Cup 1970 sticker annual signed by Pele, which went for £10,000.
Wow!
So we're not up to the.
I mean,
we're not up to the 16
how much
million.
effort went into that. I can't even.
Exactly.
I can't imagine how much effort went into that.
But this is a lot of money, $16 million for sure. Ken Golden, who is the guy who owns the auction house, of course, is making a big cut off that. That's how auction people make their money. AJ Scaramucci, there'll be something in this for him, and obviously he hopes that it goes up and he can drive that market. Logan Paul, of course, there's a huge amount of money in that for him. Absolutely sure that it's all above board and everyone felt it was worth 16 million. That's what got paid and all of that. But certainly if you look back at the world of old market, of old master paintings, the stories of how the biggest prices ever are reached are so murky.
Yes, and this was very performative, I thought. I found it quite interesting. When I was reading an article about Ken Golden's HQ, his headquarters is in New Jersey, in an industrial park next to a hospice. I was like, oh my God. America, you can be so on the nose. I can't really, but yes, I agree with this. This was an event in all sorts of different ways, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to read more about it as time goes on.
The one I was reading up about, props from movies and things like that, and there's all sorts of records. I think the Reebok slippers from Wizard of Oz went for 22 million. One of which Spielberg bought to give to a museum. One of which was stolen from the Judy Garland museum, and that's the one that went for 22 million. It's fascinating what does become enormously profitable, like the fedora and the bullwhip from Indiana Jones, of course, goes for a lot of money. Peter Jackson owns the only working Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which he paid like £400,000 for, and takes around on charity events. Castaway, it's not a huge movie.
No,
right?
The Tom Hanks one.
The Tom Hanks one. Wilson, the volleyball, the actual volleyball from that, which is this sort of filthy, deflated volleyball, went for $230,000. This world of Pokemon cards, I quite like it as a thing because I like collecting things and I like trading things. It speaks to me. Something like Pokemon, I sort of think Pokemon, someone invented it. And someone created it, and someone really nurtured it, and someone gave such joy to generations and generations of kids. I quite like it if that becomes one of our big asset classes of this century. If whiskey
it's no more stupid than a load of Andy Warhols. I will be honest with you.
Exactly that. It is exactly the same amount of stupid, and as human beings,
and liked by the same people. Recommendations, Richard.
A couple of things. If you haven't watched yet, How to Get to Heaven from Belfast, Lisa McGee's series on Netflix, her sort of follow-up to Derry Girls, is just brilliant. It's 8 episodes. It's bonkers. The casting is unbelievable. You get different actors playing different generations of these characters, and the casting is amazing. The writing is amazing. Really funny, really sharp, just full of life, beautifully directed. It's a real treat, that. And also, finally, Harriet Tyce from Traitors, her new book, Witch Trial, is out. I'll say this, it's really, really, really great. And for anyone in the crime writing community, she is the absolute real deal.
We will be back on Thursday, as always, with a Q&A. There's a lot of Andrew-related questions.
A lot of Prince Andrew questions,
yeah,
I know.
So we'll be dealing with a lot of media and Andrew questions.
Not Prince Andrew. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Yeah. And then something very close to my own heart, our bonus episode for members on Friday. It's 40 years since a certain movie, Top Gun, came out.
I must see it. I'm joking.
Yeah, I know.
Joking.
You better be.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's for our members. If you want to join for ad-free listening and Discord and early access to events, etc., it is therestisentertainment.com. Otherwise, we will see you all on Thursday.
Thursday.